I went out once with an ex-girlfriend of mine who was Miss World, and we went back to the hotel we were staying at about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'd been to the casino, and I'd won, I think, about £30,000. And as we've walked in, I've ordered a drink from the porter, who happens to be from Belfast. And it was a toss-up who was drunk more, him or me. So I said, can we have another bottle of champagne up in the room? And he's come up, and I'm with Miss World, with 30,000 on the bed. He's brought Dom Perignon up. I've given him a tip. I've given him 50 quid, which is probably more than he earned in a year. As he was leaving, he turned around and he said to me, he said, Mr. Best, he said, I've got to ask you something. And he's turned around, he's looked at this Miss World strutting around with no clothes on, and all the money in the bed. And he said to me, where did it all go wrong?
I want to send a telegram to Mr. Matt Busby. Manchester United Football Club. That's the one.
Bob was the chief scout for Man United. And he was the one that basically discovered me.
And the message is, I think I have found you a genius. Stop. And sign it, Bob Bishop.
When I was a kid, I was so small and skinny. I don't think anybody believed it was possible for someone that looked like me to be able to play football. One day he pulled me aside and he said, I think you're a little bit special. He said, I'm going to send you to Manchester United. And that was the start of it.
Well, now, young man, the rest is up to you.
Bonetti for Chelsea. To McCready. Best with McCready, and McCready's made a pass, and it's a magnificent goal. Best, what a magnificent goal! A truly brilliant piece of football there by Best. There he is, number 11.
I'd never been outside of Belfast more than about 10 miles when we used to go to the seaside at Bangor. So to come over, and I came over with another young boy called Eric McMorty. And we came over on the boat, and I said, when you get to Liverpool, jump on a train, come to Manchester, get in a taxi and ask for Old Trafford and we'll meet you. So we get in a taxi and we ask for Old Trafford. So the taxi driver says to like two 15-year-old kids who have never left Belfast before, which Old Trafford? And we thought, like, we're supposed to be the thick ones, we're Irish. I knew I was better than most kids of my age back home in Belfast. But when I arrived, in my funny way of thinking, I used to figure, well, I'm here, and they've got 4 teams. They've got the first team, the reserves, the A team, and the B team, plus the youth team. And I thought, by the time I wait for all the ones in front of me to make it, it's going to be too late. So Eric and I sat up and we talked about it. And he said to me, do you want to go home? I said, yeah. I said, we're wasting our time. So we decided to go home. When I went home after the first day, I felt a little bit like I was cheating my mum and dad, because they'd done so much for me. And I'd come over and been given this opportunity that kids dream of. And I felt like I'd nearly thrown it away. So I went back 2 weeks later. I was determined, whatever happened, one way or the other, I was going to stick it out and make sure it worked. The first game I played, I remember walking down the tunnel. I was a kid who'd never played in front of like more than 200 people before. And all of a sudden, the people opposite you see you. So they start to chant because they know the team's coming out. And all of a sudden, it goes round the ground. And it gets bigger and bigger, getting louder and louder and louder. Freak out. And I couldn't hear anything. And I come out and I thought, I can't believe this. For me, it was like a dream come true. The first league goal was in '63. It was actually my second league game against Burnley at Old Trafford. We'd just lost at Burnley very heavily. I wasn't really expecting to play because I'd been in Belfast when I received a telegram asking me to come back, and I figured I was coming back maybe to get a game and if maybe the reserves at the most, but my father was pretty convinced I was going straight into the first team, and as usual he was right. So I got in touch with the people at Old Trafford and I said, look, if I come and play, I want to be back in Belfast the same night, finish my Christmas with the family. And I thought, this kid is telling us what to do. So anyway, I came over, I played in the game, and I scored my first league goal. And we beat them 5-1. And I was back in Belfast the same night. And the biggest thrill I've ever had was reading my name in the Belfast newspapers, saying that I'd scored at Old Trafford for Manchester United.
Kick off in their sixth-round encounter with Wolves at Molineux. And Wolves draw first blood, a goal from Macklemore.
Football in the 60s was so much fun because you basically knew 99% of the time when you went out to play against teams that there were going to be lots of goals, lots of excitement.
Wolves after it again. Folks was about to clear, but Macklemore was there again.
There were very, very rarely 0-0 draws. You knew there were always going to be goals and sometimes goals galore. So it was tremendous stuff.
From the kick, Dennis Law, who just had a knock on the head, used his head to score Manchester's first. So to the second half, and that fantastic 4-goal fusillade within 24 minutes. The equaliser came from across from Connelly, hit home by Hurd. Ten minutes later, George Best put Manchester in the lead. Now scoring their fourth, wing-half Kieran. The fifth and final one was a wonderful free kick by Law. So Manchester are in the semi-final for the fourth year running.
I was in a team with some of the greatest players of all time, no matter who you talk about. You talk about Dennis Law and Bobby Charlton, Paddy Crerand, Nobby Stiles, even the so-called unsung heroes like Bill Foulkes and Shea Brennan and Alex Stepney, who people seem to forget about. Because we had so many great individuals and different personalities, if two or three of us had an off day, the fourth one had a good day, which was nice. I mean, if Dennis and Bobby didn't play well, maybe I did it one week, and the following week, if I had a stinker, Dennis would stick a couple in, and then Bobby would take over, so it was lovely.
Wolves kick off on home ground at Molineux in their fifth-round encounter with Manchester United. After only 2 minutes, Manchester's giving a goal away. Having taken a Wagstaff pass in the penalty area, Hunt falls flat. The ref awards a penalty, and Wharton's kick goes right for the net. Then a mere 7 minutes later, the Wolfpack are again in full cry, and United oblige them with another penalty. And another fine kick from Wharton finds the target. 2 goals down, the most exciting forward line in British football gets into top gear. A high centre's headed home by that great individualist, Dennis Law. Second half now, and Dennis Law, who always seems to cover an incredible area, positions himself to head home Manchester's equaliser. One minute later, Manchester take the lead as George Best, another great individualist, scores the third. Having tasted blood, Wolves are after more, and Greg in goal has to watch he doesn't get savage. Manchester may be renowned for individuality, but as their name implies, they're just as united as the highly organised Wolves. 2 minutes from the end, Best gives Hurd his chance to score number 4. So Manchester's through by 4 goals to 2.
In those days, we played like it should have been played. You know, we played 2 full-backs, 3 half-backs and 5 forwards, the way the game should be played. So to be in and out, I just enjoyed it so much, because I was still a kid, I was doing something I loved, and I was getting paid for it.
Best. Here he goes again. Georgie Best. What a beautiful bit of running by this man.
Well, when I joined United, of course, Sir Matt Busby was manager. And of course, a very greatly respected man, both on and off the field. He was lovely, Sir Matt. He never said anything. He didn't have to. Just the fact that he was there made you want to play. And he just come out and he said, boys, keep going. I mean, we can still win this. And that was basically all he ever said to us. And he said the same every league game we ever played. Go out and enjoy yourself. That was his philosophy. And that's what we did. We'd never heard of tactics. We never planned anything. Pre-season, we did a hard training. That's when you did the hard work. You know, 4 hours a day, a hard slog. During the season, it was 5-a-side. That's the way we did it. The same as Liverpool do today. I was a kid learning the game. I got lots of bollockings from the boys, Dennis and Bobby in particular, because I was playing like I still played, as I say, in Belfast. You know, and there were times I should have released the ball. But if I beat 5-6 players, I would have beat 7-8. You know, so at times when they were in better positions than me, I learned through experience. But I still played like I was a kid, which in those days I still was.
George Best, Britain's superstar footballer. But here we see another side to George Best, the businessman. And now his combined talents have helped him realize another ambition, to be a house owner. Not surprisingly, it's no ordinary house. This fast-moving 24-year-old has built for himself a £36,000 bachelor pad.
I just decided at an early age that I didn't want to live in digs anymore. And I ordered this monstrosity of a house that if it had kept, I probably could have sold for about 6 million now. And I had this mad architect called Fraser Crane who did it.
When George first gave me the commission, all he said was, build me a house big enough to take a sunken bath and a full-size snooker table. To get a brief like this was quite a challenge. I studied George play football and wanted to interpret his performance in the design of this house here in Bramhall, just a few miles from Manchester.
I had TVs that went up the chimney, and all my curtains worked by push button. It was total madness. Everything in the house worked by push button.
The warmth of Best's personality is reflected in my use of natural materials, like the thick pure wool of the carpets throughout the house, the soft leather of the furniture, and the curtains which embrace this L-shaped lounge and dining area.
After a couple of months, when the coach parties started arriving on a Sunday and parking on my lawn and having picnics and stealing my goldfish from the pond, I decided it was time to get out of being a superstar. So I went back to Mrs. Fullowest. The 60s was such a tremendous era, really, for everything. Music, fashion, everything was changing. And to be part of the football scene at that time was probably the most exciting period of my life and a lot of other people's. The club won the FA Cup in '63, the League '65, again in '67, European Cup '68. I mean, I couldn't have written a better script for my 10 years at Manchester United in those days. Looking back, I would say they were obviously the best 10 years of my life.
Ireland kick off and go into attack. This is the 77th international between the two countries. England, having won 59 games to Ireland's 12, were strong favourites. Playing for Ireland, Georgie Best, who usually plays with Bobby Charlton for Manchester United. But this time, Charlton robs him of the ball.
I only played 37 times for my country. When I think, I made my debut with Pat Jennings, and he played over 100. I'm a little bit disappointed in that respect.
England were finding the Irish team hard to beat midfield, and they were sometimes struggling against well-planned Irish attacks. Then the equaliser came from Best, who beat Nobby Stiles before crashing the ball into the net. 1-1, and the game looked wide open.
When I played for them, they weren't a very good side. We had 2 or 3 good players, and then players from 3rd and 4th division made up with Irish League players, so it was a bit frustrating at times.
Best. Going right at this English defence. McMorty, number 7. Well, McMorty had every chance to get to that. Best held it and held it and held it. Good run by Best.
We never qualified for the World Cup. They have done since, which is great, because I'm very proud of them. But when I was a kid getting in the side when I was 17, we twice failed to qualify for the World Cup, and it was a big, big disappointment. Because even though we weren't a good side, that is the stage that you want to be on, if you can play. And I knew I could have done something special, playing against the best sides in the world and the best players in the world. And that's one of the biggest disappointments in my life, that I never ever got to the World Cup finals. United had always been reasonably successful in Europe. I think it was helping my game playing against some great European sides. And your game was lifted. I mean, you were playing in front of sometimes 120,000 people. And it was a perfect setting, so I tended to play a lot better, I think. The one game really that I pick out is the game in Benfica in '66.
Simoes, oh, beautiful effort by Simoes.
When we went there, when they were virtually unbeatable at home, and actually annihilated them. I remember the first goal, we got a free kick out on the left, and I think Tony Dunn, the fullback, took it.
Dunn with the free kick. Up goes Best, he's scored! Best has got a goal!
I didn't get too many goals in my head, but this was a very important one. The second one, I remember, it was quite a good goal. I picked it up sort of just over the halfway line.
Here comes Best again. What a player this boy is, he's got another! What a player!
quite soon after, I almost scored a third. I think if I had done, I'd have walked off then. I think I felt at the end of the game that when I came off, for the first time, I felt that I had the potential to become whatever I wanted to be. I knew I could do things that other people couldn't do. Not because I was better as a person, but because I was born with something that was a gift. I'd gone and played one of these great sides and played like a kid and beat them basically on my own. And that was the start of the El Beatle, because in those days, you know, my hair was the same as it is now, and I played with my shirt out like Dennis did. And the press picked up on like the fifth Beatle thing. So I wore a leather jacket and a sombrero because I knew that I was going to get my photograph taken. Because I was a kid and I loved it. I loved the publicity. I loved reading about myself in the newspapers. And unfortunately, it became a monster, which is probably the start of my downfall. We played against Rapid Vienna at Old Trafford, and they were reckoned to be one of the top sides at the time in Europe.
Law, Best, Law. Oh, it's nearly a goal. Morgan. Best. That's it.
I scored twice against them, and I think really that was the start of me becoming European Player of the Year, that particular game.
Best. Styles. Trying to work a position. Best. Yes, it's there.
When I went to the club in 1961 as a 15-year-old kid, it was only 3 years after they had lost so many great players in the air crash at Munich, returning from a European Cup game. No one ever really spoke about it at Old Trafford. It was always there in the back of their minds, I suppose. And it was always, we felt, an unwritten law that we had to be the club, the first English club to win the European Cup. The only thing that disappointed me was that Celtic won it the year before. And we should have been the first British side to win it.
The man on whom the real burden rests, Matt Busby, has lived 11 dedicated years for this. Surely the prize couldn't elude him now. Benfica in white kick off into the second half. No score in the first, no sign yet which way the pendulum would swing. Eusebio, the greatest scorer in European soccer. Coluna, Benfica's captain. Twice they've won this European Cup before. George Best, one of Manchester's miracle men.
It's one of the few games I can't remember. I can normally remember games I've played in. But I suppose the whole atmosphere and being in the European Cup final, particularly that year when it was at Wembley, I can't remember anything. I can remember my goal, and that's it.
And now England's record-breaking scorer, Bobby Charlton, is to break the stalemate. A high pass from Sadler, and Bobby's head snicks it home. After the tumult and the shouting, George Best has a try, but Coluna steals it from him. Could be trouble for United. Oh, spot of bother. Referee Low Bellow sorts it out. Charlton's worried. Best has been injured. Luckily, a quick recovery, and Benfica's goalie ready for this onslaught by Best and Sadler.
We were winning 1-0. We hadn't really played very well over the 90 minutes. And they equalised with, I think, 5 minutes to go.
Centre-half Bill Fouts as Benfica advance. A centre from Torres and Gracia equalises.
The players really didn't say too much to each other until we actually got up ready for the start of the extra time. And we sort of all do each other, we're trying to gee each other up and saying, come on, we can do it.
Here's the sequence that writes their golden chapter in the records. 3 goals in 8 minutes. Number 1, Best takes his time before driving it home. The next one comes from a corner. Charlton's kick swings across for Kidd to head and score on the rebound. Three goals to 1. United have got it made. But there's still another, and it's number 2 for Bobby Charlton. That's how history is made. Glasgow Celtic were the first British team to win the European Cup. Now Manchester United have become the first victors from England. The dream of Matt Busby is realised at last. So often, so near since the Munich tragedy, now they've arrived. Manchester United, kings of Europe. The early start to the season means a timely shot in the arm for millions of fans who miss even a few days without their favourite relaxation. It was a chance to see how the European champions would fare against their traditional Merseyside opponents, Everton. Everton kick off. With the exception of Wilson, they were playing their cup final team. Creran to Styles. With their European triumph, United have set themselves a terrifically high standard. This United attack is thwarted, Labone heading it clear.
In '68, when we won the European Cup, everybody said this is a start of something beautiful and wonderful, and it should have been. We were the best side in Europe.
Now, Footballer of the Year, George Best, had the crowds in a frenzy and the ball in the net.
We played together. We've known each other for like 100 years because it was off the cuff. We knew how to play. It was like the great Real Madrid or the Brazilians. That's how we played.
But they weren't level for long. Only 3 minutes later, George Best sent a beautiful cross for Bobby Charlton to score the winning goal of the day.
And all of a sudden, they were bringing in players, they were buying players that didn't have the right to wear the red shirt of Manchester United. I'm paying millions for them. And I just got totally disillusioned, playing with amateurs after playing with some of the greatest players in the world.
Sadler is up there at the near post. Good back header. And O'Neill going outside him and 3 men inside. One is Law, playing it for Best. Best has made room for his left foot. George Best. Tommy Taylor's header. George Best. This incredible ability that George Best has to turn. George Best sold 2 dummies and now has made a chance for himself. His hat-trick!
I ended up feeling that I was becoming responsible sometimes on the field for what was happening. And the frustration started to show on the field, and I started to suffer a little bit in my own form, and things started going a little bit awry off the field. But I did feel that there was a little bit too much responsibility on my own shoulders.
Just about now, George Best will be arriving back in Manchester. But he'll be 12 hours late for the training session he should have attended with the rest of his team this morning, and for the much publicised confrontation or showdown with his team manager. The Irish international was due to meet Sir Matt Busby to explain his actions over the last few days. But instead, when he should have been in Manchester seeing Sir Matt, he was here in Islington in North London at the flat of a friend, Miss Sinead Cusack, the actress. explaining to her his problems at Manchester United. Tonight, Miss Cusack said that Best, one of the most highly paid and controversial players in the country, was very distressed and upset.
The pressure off the field, I think, was really affecting the way I thought about football. I really felt that I couldn't play football anymore. I started coming to London quite a lot. On one occasion, I came down to stay with a girlfriend, and I thought I'd have a nice, quiet weekend with her. I ended up being holed up in her flat for about 4 days, with literally dozens of pressmen outside. I ended up having to call the police and some friends of mine to whisk me away. So the whole thing was becoming a circus. I've apologised to Mr. Busby and the United club for the way I behaved over the weekend, which was completely wrong, and I know it was.
Is it football, George, that worries you, which presumably would not be a personal problem?
Well, like I said, the problems are it's a personal thing. There's only 2 people who know about them, and that's the boss and myself, and I don't want anyone else to know.
Are you satisfied with your football career at the moment, the way it's progressing?
Well, I'm satisfied. I'm playing for the best club in the world, so I'm quite satisfied, yeah. Bobby thought I was letting the club down, the way I was behaving, and I'm talking towards the end. So, I mean, he'd look up at me to hit a ball to me, and he wouldn't. And I would do the same, and it became like a stupid... We were like school kids. He won't admit it, but I will. And it was silly because we were playing for the same cause. I mean, he loves the club, probably more than anybody. And it was daft, so it started to show in the way we were playing together.
And now George Best. Bonds after him. And still George Best. All going, cutting one side of Lampard, sending him the wrong way, and still George Best. And it's still George Best with a shot that had Grotier down.
Well, I was still doing it on the pitch and performing what I did better than anybody else. It was okay. I got away with things.
To George Best again. Getting past Robson. Still with Best. Letting one go, and a goal! George Best then.
And of course, when results started going against us, and the team went in a decline after '68, when we were the best club side, then it became very, very difficult, because the British press have got this lovely habit of putting superstars on a pedestal and letting them stay there for about 10 minutes and knocking them off.
How did it go, George? Have a hat, gentlemen, please.
I'd been suspended for, I think it was 6 weeks. It might have been 4 or 6 weeks. So we were playing Northampton in the Cup. All the media were saying, why should they bring me back? You know, because the team's doing well.
Could lose it, it's Best! Georgie Best! Ferren through for Best. Here he goes again. Georgie Best! Willie Morgan coming over to help Kidd now. And a chance for Best. Here's the hat-trick. There it is eventually. Kidd again. Here's Best. Number 4. Georgie Best, just the tiniest touch. Burns, right in action right away. Best going through the middle. He's on for 5. There it is. It's Crerand. Best. Here's the record. There it is.
It was just one of those games. We went there, we beat them 8-2, and I scored 6 goals. And it was like a fingers up to the lot of them who'd said I shouldn't play again.
So, Matt, you've said before that you were retiring. Do you really mean it this time?
Oh, yes. Well, I meant it the first time, too. But unfortunately, situations developed whereby the directors asked me to fill a gap for a period of time. But I can assure you this time it's the end. It is the end. I won't certainly entertain it again.
Well, after Sir Matt retired, there were so many managers coming and going. It was like a revolving door. It was very difficult for the players to get to know them and get to respect them, really, because they didn't stay long enough to earn that respect that Sir Matt had earned.
It's said that you're looking for something in the region of £350,000 for George Best. Is this true, Frank?
This is a figure that's been put by the newspapers. The club has put no figure on George Best's valuation, and we'll have to wait to see what propositions come in from other clubs.
So George Best will never play in the United first team again?
As far as I'm aware, the decision was made with that in mind.
I eventually decided to leave England. I was being hounded constantly by the media, so I decided to go off to Spain, thinking it would be a nice place to get away from it all and get a little bit of sunshine and relax. It ended up being as bad in Spain, or maybe even worse, because they were following me and looking for all sorts of stories, so it became an even bigger nightmare there. Unfortunately, after about 5 days, I had a thrombosis, sitting in a bar. So I had to jump in a plane and come back. And they stuck me in intensive care for a week. And the nice thing was, the first person who came to see me was Sir Matt. He walked in and I was lying there with a drip, thinning my blood out to get rid of this thrombosis, which fortunately for me, instead of coming up to my heart or my brain, had gone down to my leg. And he came in and he stayed about 20 minutes. And he said, everything's all right, and if you need anything, call me. And as he walked out the door, he turned to me, he said, George, get back in the game. We all miss you. Looking forward to the game very much.
You've missed it?
I have, yeah, a lot, yeah. And now that I've come in and see the whole atmosphere, so I realise how much I've missed it, yeah.
There were some hard words when you packed it in last time at the club. Is that all over now?
Oh, I hope so. The only way I can prove it I'm in it now is right on the pitch, and that's all I want to do.
Time heals things. I'm the manager of Manchester United. When George approached me to go and speak to him, I was delighted, because I think he's the greatest player in the world. I've always have done.
It was being said that George Best would never again kick a ball for Manchester United.
Who said that?
Well, when Tommy Docherty arrived, I went back for a short while. I didn't get on very well with him when I went back, and he let me down on one occasion. He said, look, I night out with the boys. He said, if you do it, no one will ever find out. He said, but I'll bring you back in the afternoon. I'll train you twice as hard. So I said, okay. So I trained for 2-3 months like a lunatic to get fit, to play for the club that I still consider my club. So they were playing, I think, Plymouth Argyle in a cup game. So I didn't come in on a Thursday morning because I'd gone out with the boys on the Wednesday night. So I came in the afternoon, I trained Friday morning. He never spoke to me, never said a thing. So then I turned up for the game on Saturday, and he called me in the referee's room, and he said, you're not playing today. I said, what do you mean I'm not playing? He said, because you didn't turn up for training Thursday morning, and I can't let it be known that you're the boss. He said, I'm the boss. So I said, if I don't play today, I will never, ever play for Manchester United again. All the players left, and I went up and I sat in the stands on my own for about an hour. And I just sat and I looked at the pitch for an hour. And I walked out and I never went back. Because of one man. Barry's an old friend of mine from Manchester, and he came and asked if I'd be interested in playing a couple of friendly games for him, and there was no reason why I shouldn't.
Come, my son. God bless you. Good luck.
Well, I find after I left, even small clubs like Dunstable and Stockport County were coming in and offering me phenomenal amounts of money just for a one-off. And I ended up becoming a little bit of a maverick, and really it was like, have boots will travel, and that's the way I was playing it. And it was becoming a circus, so it was then I decided that I was off to America. They were taking over the best players in the world. I mean, Pelé was there, Beckenbauer was there, Eusebio, and when I talk to people now, they say, well, it was like when you were past your peak. I went there when I was 29. So you're not exactly past your peak at 29.
Still George Best, no way through, or is there? Yes! That's wonderful! Well, those who think George Best's career is declining should look at this. They dived in at him from all angles, and still he found a way through. A gap was lost then. Another trick, another turn. And this is the very best of George Best.
It was a funny time in my life because I was playing in America, and the chairman of Fulham called me up and he said, look, because the season in America at that time was only about 6 months. So he said, for 6 months you're sitting around doing nothing. Come back and play in the English League. And he said, I've just signed Rodney Marsh and Bobby Moore. And Marshy is, I mean, if you're talking about characters, he is one of the greatest of all time. So I said, okay. So we came back, and I think at the time their average attendance was about 3,000, and we had 25,000 at the game. So all of a sudden they got the money back. If people pay money to come and watch me, I'm an entertainer, and I've got to give them what they want. I've got to make them laugh. I want to see them walk away from the stadium with smiles on their faces. We played against Hereford once, and Rodney and I, we ended up tackling each other just for a laugh. I mean, we planned it. I said, Rodney, come and get the ball off me so we can make them laugh.
Hurdle beautifully over top. Took it off Rodney Marsh. Marsh coming back to tackle him. Well, you can do that when you're 4-1 up.
And when I watch it now on screen, it's lovely to see people with their kids leaning over and laughing. You go to any first division ground, well, go to any ground today, you don't see anybody laughing. And that is terrible, that you can go to a sporting event and not enjoy it. I still go to Old Trafford as much as possible, a few times a year, and I still like to go to the ground. And it's nice to stroll around and look. I mean, it's obviously changed tremendously. New dressing rooms, new stands, they're putting seating in. But I still get a tremendous response from the people when I go back.
The Irish master.
The place is still special. I walk in when it's empty, and I can still see the crowds, I can still hear them. And the things they used to sing. Football will always mean a lot to me. I've always found it difficult to replace the buzz I got from playing and the high I got. So I try, the only thing that's ever come close to it is when I'm coaching the kids and hopefully trying to pass something on to them.
Taking turns, starting the 18-yard line.
The one thing that amazes me is the fact that the kids know who I am, which is a tremendous compliment to me, not only in this country, but when I go abroad. So it's obviously stuff that's been passed down from their parents and grandparents, and it is a great compliment.
It's getting better. Who's next?
Get in, get in! Bad luck, bad luck. If the kids mess about, I give them a smack across the back of the head and tell them to take it seriously. Because apart from, it's got to be fun anyway. But at the same time, you've got to work at it. And I find I like working with kids 8, 9, 10. And I find when they get to about like 15, 16, all of a sudden they think they know it all. Right, you want to try a couple of in-swingers? Yeah?
Yeah, go on.
Come on then. Are you all right-footed?
No. Yeah.
No, yeah. Make your mind up.
What's this, your left foot?
Yeah.
All right, let's see you all get them in. Has everybody scored now? I still have people coming up to me and saying, when you didn't like training, you didn't turn up for training. You couldn't do what I did if you weren't fit and healthy and train hard. I train harder than anybody I've ever known. I used to go out in the ground and try and hit the crossbar, you know, from 15, 20, 30, 40 yards, just to improve my skills. It was pride, because I didn't want anybody to be better than me. Well, there's a difference between a loner and an individual. I think I do my own thing, and I still do today. I mean, people tell me I shouldn't do this, I shouldn't do that, and I should go to bed at 9 o'clock at night, I should get up at 8 o'clock in the morning. I do what I want to do. I'm fed up with people ripping me off, which they have done for the last 20-odd years. So I do exactly, if I want to go out every night and get drunk and fall over, that's my prerogative. I can do it. And I don't want any bosses telling me what to do, because I'm my own man, and I always have been. Right or wrong, that's my philosophy, and that's the way I believe life should be led.
Best. Styles. Trying to work a position. Best gets it there.
People say to me, you wasted this, you should have done that, you should have. And I say, well, you look at my record.
Tommy Taylor's header. George Best.
I was at Manchester United for 12 years almost. I was the leading goal scorer for 6 years.
To Best. Here he goes. And George Best sets a top-scoring record.
We won the league twice, we won the European Cup, we won the Youth Cup. And people say to me, you wasted your talent in your life. I said, well, look at my record. How can you say that?
But O'Neill to George Best again. Getting past Robson. Still with Best. Anyone go?
I said, there's not many players in a modern game have ever achieved what I achieved.
Best. Nice dummy and shot, yes!
The one thing that outweighs the bad times is the football. They can never, ever take that away from me.